So, as you saw in the last episode, Brihad yelled at Brahma, and poor Brahma almost jumped out of his skin. He had never been yelled at before. He'd never been spotted before. However, Brahma quickly explained who he was and what he was there to do, and once again he tried to rush into the hut. But Brihad was a very well brought up young man. He knew that he had insulted Brahma, the great god Brahma. He knew that he had to make a formal apology, and he knew what the formal apology involved if it had to be made to someone who was so much higher in station than yourself. And so, very carefully, Brihad removed his upper garment and he tied it around his waist. Then he undid his hair, and then finally he lay down flat on the ground with his head on Brahma's feet, and he proceeded to make a formal apology, a very long formal apology. Brahma was in a real rush. The baby was about to be born. He was about to leave the mother's womb and enter the world. You see, it's a very tiny window of time in which you can write the destiny. But short of kicking Brihad's head out of the way and stepping over him, there was very little he could do. And so he waited till Brihad had finished. And once again, Brahma tried to rush back into the hut, but Brihad was not done. So, said Brihad to Brahma with a big smile on his face, what are you going to write on the child's head? By now, Brahma had lost his temper. He said to him, do you know, young man, even I don't know what I am going to write on the child's head. A person's destiny is decided a long time before they are even born. I just put my pen on the child's head, the pen does the rest. The destiny is calculated according to the good and bad deeds that you've done in your past life. But if you will please just let me go, I promise I will stop on the way out and I will tell you exactly what I have written. And saying that, Brahma rushed into the hut. He was out again in a moment. It doesn't take very long. But by the time he came out, he was looking very serious. He said to Brihad, I have bad news. The child, it is a beautiful little baby boy, by the way. The child is destined to have a very sad life. He will grow up to be very, very poor, and all he will ever have in his life is one buffalo and one sack of rice. That will be his lot in life. And as Brihad opened up his mouth to object to this terrible destiny, Brahma said, yes, I know. Your master is a wonderful man and he doesn't deserve that his child should have such a terrible destiny. But destiny is calculated on how good or bad you are in your previous life. No one gets a free pass just because your parents are wonderful in this life. No, don't argue with me. That is the rule of karma. And remember, you cannot tell anyone what I have just told you. If you do, your head will explode into 1,000 pieces. And saying that, the great god left. As you can imagine, Brihad was very upset at what he had just heard, but he couldn't tell anyone about it. And gradually, as time went by, he pushed it to the back of his mind and he almost forgot all about it till 3 years later, quite by chance, the old sage's elderly wife becomes pregnant again. Once again, in the 8th month of her pregnancy, the old sage decides to go off on a pilgrimage. It's all very familiar. Once again, Brihad is left in charge of the birth of the child. Once again, on the day of labor, Brahma arrives to write the child's destiny. Once again, Brihad is waiting for him. And once again, on his way out, Brahma stops to tell Brihad what he has written. This time, Brahma was looking even more serious. He said to Brihad, I have terrible news. The child, it is a beautiful little girl, by the way. The child is destined to grow up to be a prostitute. Her destiny is to sell her body every night, and that is all the money she will ever have. That is what she will feed herself with, the money that she earns from selling her body. And once again, as Brihad opened his mouth to argue, Brahma said, no, don't argue. As I said before, your destiny depends on what you did in your past life, not on how wonderful your parents are. And remember, you cannot tell anyone what I have just told you, or your head will explode into 1,000 pieces. And with that, once again, Brahma left. Brihad was heartbroken with what he had just heard. His master was a good and true man. He couldn't believe that the gods could be so cruel as to give his children such terrible lives. I mean, If all that mattered was what you had done in your previous life, then what was the point of doing anything at all in this life? Brihad was so upset, he decided to leave the hermitage. He couldn't stay there and watch the children grow towards these horrible lives that the gods had mapped out for them. And so Brihad left the hermitage and he stayed away for 20 years. But no matter how much time passed, he couldn't put this out of his mind. And so finally, after 20 years, he picked up the courage to go back to the hermitage, to go back and check on the children.